donate.
Why do they doubt the kid? I'm about to prove them all wrong again. I got a low tolerance, cause they don't even know what the problem is. It's me. You waiting on the boy to fail, then hold your breath and face your death. Cause you play a roulette with each step I progress, no less. Go ahead and place your bets, cause we know where we at, we know we top tier. Cause all the hate that you bring, we know it stops here. I'm taking off like a rocket here, ain't stopping here. It's strange how they cannot see the future, but see profit here. Wait up, we gon' always win. Tell 'em I can't take no loss. My team hold no L's, no. Aiming for the top, can't make it by myself.
All right. We're back. Hope you enjoyed your day off. Hope you enjoyed your Labor Day. I enjoyed the heck out of my Labor Day weekend. Rose suggested that I let you all know that I perfectly cooked the hot dogs and hamburgers. I also made some macaroni salad. She made the deviled eggs, wine, old fashions. It was a good weekend. Also got some fantasy drafts out of the way. I spent a bunch of time with Scotty outside of this environment, which is nice sometimes. He made us late. He made one of our drafts late. Scotty did. I'm putting it on him. So we got that stuff out of the way. We had I got to see a ton of my friends. That's one of the best things. Like, I'm not going to talk fantasy all day, but one of the best parts about fantasy drafts, the in-person ones, is you see like 12, 13 of your closest friends all together, shooting the bleep, hanging out, reconnect. It's cool. It's a cool deal. So we did that. I hope you guys enjoyed your Labor Day. We are back, and we are not the only ones back. It's an exciting time about to unfold here in Congress. The recess is over. As of 12 p.m. today, recess is over. They will be back. And there is a lot that is going to be happening in Congress coming up. First and foremost, there is the shutdown looming, okay? There is a government shutdown set for September 30th. It is looming. We did this before. Last time we did this, I don't know if you guys remember, the shutdown was looming. And the Republicans put forth a stopgap bill to keep it open. And in that, handed Trump a ton of unilateral budgetary power. Do you remember this? And 10 Democrats, including Chuck Schumer, signed it, saying, look, keeping the government open, keeping people employed, keeping our country working and moving and growing and going is more important than more power going to Donald Trump. That's what 10 Democrats plus, including Chuck Schumer, said. They signed it. They passed it. And people were pissed. You were pissed. I was pissed. And we have seen what Trump has done with unilateral budgetary power since then, not even including the tariffs, which we are going to get to today. We are fighting this disease, right? This Project 2025 disease. And by the way, one of the main authors is going to be featured here today. Randy showed you secret footage of Russ Vought in a meeting in a hotel room with a contributor, a right-wing contributor, talking about our plan is to paralyze the government, overwhelm the lawyers. Too much. Executive order after executive order. We're going to seize the money. We're going to weaponize the money and the power. It is own work. Look, he's one of the largest co-authors, most influential co-authors of Project 2025. His disease is now spreading. It's spreading, okay? And we're going to win some and we're going to lose some. We lost that one with Chuck and those Democrats. We lost that one. And here we go again. This time, the Democrats are saying, we're not backing down. Ro Khanna himself said there is no sense of surrender in the Democrats this time around. What do the Democrats want? They want to claw back some of the power that was granted to Trump in the last stopgap. They want to bring it back, lessen his unilateral control over budgetary issues. That's one thing they want to do. They also want to claw back specifically money for Medicaid, SNAP, rural homing assistance, housing assistance, retirement home assistance. A lot of housing stuff they want to get back. Important stuff that you got pissed about in the one big beautiful bill. They want to claw some of that money back. and they have their heels dug in. Trump says, bring it. Bring it. A spokesman for Trump, for the White House, said, there's not going to be any backing down. We're not going to accept any limitations on the president's authorities or attempts to reverse President Trump's policies. The president is not going to be constrained. He's doing one of these to the Democrats. Bring it. You know damn well the Democrats in Congress care a hell of a lot more about your well-being, what's good for you in this country, than Trump does. And when it comes to a possible shutdown, I'll tell you how this game of chicken ends right now. When we're actually facing a shutdown and it's the American people who are going to be hurt, it will be the Democrats who flinch again. It will be the Democrats who flinch again, in my opinion. Prove me wrong, Chuck. Prove me wrong, Roe. Show me. Show me, Jeffries. Show me the backbone. Show me the fight. Show me the pushback. He's saying, bring it. What Trump's really saying is, I'll let this mother shut down. I'm not giving up any power. I will let this shut down before I'll give up an inch of power. He's telling them very plainly. So that's going to happen leading up to September 30th. They haven't even met yet. They haven't even begun talking about the shutdown yet. That's going to ramp up as we hit September 30th. Okay, there's other stuff going on. First of all, what you got to know is that Trump is pissed about one thing in particular. He's pissed about a lot, but one thing in particular, his nominations aren't going through. Now that Congress is back and the Senate Republicans are going to try to find a way around all of this Democratic obstructionism. What obstructionism? You see, only 135 of Trump's over 1,000 nominees have made it through. 135 out of over 1,000 have gone through. That is way behind schedule, and he is pissed about it. Oh, by the way, what in the world is this? What is happening here? Are you all getting a load of this? I can't read the chat. I don't know if and more is coming. I told you. Look, I'm going to keep it cool, Scott. I'm simply going to say we're enjoying the sign. For those of you listening on the podcast, I've stopped non sequitured into we have a beautiful new Brett Breaks Things neon sign, and me being Brett, we'll see how long it takes for me to break that thing. But for now, it is operational, and we are excited about it. Okay. So only 135 of Trump's over 1,000 nominees have made it through. They are way behind schedule, and Trump's really pissed about it. What tactics have the Democrats been using? Well, in terms of judicial nominations, they aren't submitting their blue slips. Blue slips is a courtesy. The reps from the senators from the state that the judge is nominated for, that the person is nominated for, they give their blue slips of consent. That is what Alina Habba was crying about. Oh, I've never even met these guys, and they won't give me their blue slips. I don't know what I ever did to them. Well, you're actively dangerous to the American dream. That's what you did. So they didn't give you your blue slips. That's one way. Another, instead of giving unanimous consent, they are forcing debate. Okay, they're not giving unanimous consent to anything. They are forcing debate on everything. And then when they force the debate, they are kicking the can down the road. They are refusing to set dates for debate and for committees to meet. They're pushing it as far as they can. And the Senate Republicans, when they get back down to business, they're going to look for a way to circumvent all that. Okay, they're going to look for a way to circumvent all of it. So that's a fight you're going to see looming. That's a looming fight. We'll keep our eyes on that. Lindsey Graham, he is pushing Trump, and he is backed by the Senate. 85 senators are on board for legislation to start to punish Russian allies for buying oil, gas, uranium, and any other export that Russia is selling so they can fund their terror. And Graham wants to do something about it. How about that? 85 senators want to do something about it. Right now, the senators, the Republican senators are saying, look, we won't do anything without Trump's approval. Graham is saying, if it looks like plan A isn't going to go, maybe we should look for a plan B. That's out of his mouth. If plan A isn't going to work, maybe it's time to try a plan B. We'll see what plan B looks like, because I have zero confidence that Trump will sign off on anything that hurts the puppet master. That's not in the script. Cutting off Russia's money supply to fund this war, which, by the way, has been raging ever since their cute little meeting, and all the world leaders got together, and even a couple had the balls to mention a ceasefire while Trump himself did not. That war is still raging, and Trump's got a 2-week deadline that he set. Yeah, that's laughable. That is absolutely laughable. I've got the deadline here. I've got the deadline around here somewhere, the exact date. I'll get it to you. But Graham's not satisfied with any of that. He wants to punish those allies right now. Now, there was a little taste of that with Trump's 50% tariff on India. And speaking of India, the leaders of India and China, they met with Putin. They met with Putin with what seemed to be a kind of an FU, a middle finger to Trump. Yeah, they met and they talked about the war and they talked about Trump apparently. And Kim Jong-un, he's going to join them. The actual deer leader is going to join the three of them. And it's for a parade that they're having in China to commemorate World War II. So all the best people, Kim Jong-un, Putin, India's leader, China's leader, they're all getting together in a middle finger for Trump. Just so you're clear about the global optics on that little meeting, even though Trump himself could never be aware enough to see that for what it is. But Lindsey does, and Lindsey wants to cut off that money. He wants to cut off the money. By the way, continuing along on some of the things that we're going to be seeing, that's what I'm doing right now, is kind of laying out to you what we're going to be seeing and what we're going to be reporting on and digging into over the next few weeks. RFK Jr. is set to appear at a hearing. He'll appear before the Senate Finance Committee to talk about the healthcare agenda, the budget. Yeah, right. I feel like the questions will be directed elsewhere. Okay, but one interesting part about this is the Bill Cassidy, who is becoming a vocal proponent. Opponent. I apologize. A vocal opponent from some of the more recent moves by RFK, the firing of Menarez and some of these other moves. Cassidy isn't happy. Well, he sits on the Finance Committee. Okay. He's the Republican chairman of a committee that oversees the CDC. And he got personal assurances during RFK's nominations that RFK would not mess with the vaccines or their approvals. And that's the first thing he tried to jam down Menarez's throat. Bill Cassidy is not happy with RFK Jr. That could be explosive. We could get some serious sound bites and footage from that. Bill Cassidy is not happy. And don't forget, RFK, he already fired every member of the ACIP committee, replaced them all with sycophants who are sympathetic and on board with this insane vaccine agenda. Bill Cassidy said, I don't want him even meeting. They were supposed to meet next week. I don't want him even meeting, because whatever is discussed at that new ACIP roundtable cannot be trusted, cannot be good for the American people. I don't trust it. It needs a review immediately. They shouldn't even be meeting. That's great now, Bill. But where were you when we were confirming this nutbag? Where were you then?
It's time for a quick break, then we break some more. You're listening to Brett Breaks Things. You're back with Brett Breaks Things, because democracy doesn't defend itself.
Okay, few more things. I can't wait for that hearing. I can't wait for Bill Cassidy and others to rip into him. Other things, the Epstein thing. Massey asked you and us to keep this relevant, to keep it on the American forefront. the Epstein stuff. Now, he's going to be particularly upset because of the DOJ's response to the subpoena of all Epstein-related material. They rebuffed it. They just basically gave the American people a no thank you. We're not going to do that. They did release stuff that had already all been publicly released months ago. Nothing new at all. They completely ignored the subpoena. That should piss Massey off. Ro Khanna and Massey, they have that bill in the House to release everything involved in the Epstein investigation. All of it. Everything. That's gaining ground. Did it hold its momentum through the recess? That's going to be the question that gets answered. Okay? Another thing that's going on is the House Oversight Committee has an investigation into President Joe Biden's mental state as president. They want to invalidate a bunch of Biden era policy. They want to roll back a lot of what Biden did, and they want to do it on the grounds that he was incompetent. He was mentally unfit, and there is a huge investigation ongoing about that. That is going to continue now that they are back. They have been interviewing people who were influential in the Biden administration. It's been going on for weeks. They've already had dozens of depositions and interviews, and it's going to continue. It's going to continue. Okay, and James Comer says a full report will be ready sometime in the fall. We'll get a full report on what this investigation uncovered on Joe Biden's mental state. How ironic is that? Considering what we've heard out of Trump daily, almost hourly, the insane riffs and rants and ramblings. He can't find people that are 2 feet in front of him, has no idea who's around him or where he is, can barely move. I mean, it's just incredible that that's what we're spending taxpayer dollars doing. An oversight committee investigation into Joe Biden's mental state. He's not president anymore. Why don't we spend some money digging into Don's mental state? Just a little bit. Let's just see what we find. Just throwing it out there. Since we had all this cash to throw on, all this time. Let's find out what's going on in Trump's noggin. And finally, of just some of the more interesting things going on, we reported on Josh Hawley's attempt to get stock trading banned from Congress. Remember that? That story had a lot of you guys interested. And it seems like a very necessary piece of legislation in my eyes. It's going to include future presidents, future vice presidents. It strategically does not include Don. And some of the more savvier members on the Republican side who actually want this to fail, they wanted the Democrats they wanted Hawley to include President Trump as well in that piece of legislation. But the proponents of that legislation, the ones who want it to pass, know that, hey, if we attack Don personally in this, it will definitely get killed. But if we leave Don out of it and he still tries to strike it down, it won't look great because the American people love this. They love it. Everybody's on board with not allowing people who have very intimate inside knowledge on the futures of major traded upon companies being able to trade themselves. Everybody's on board with this. This is not a concept that is difficult for anybody to understand. And with Josh Hawley putting it forward, it's bound to get a lot of bipartisan momentum. And it is. And it is. So keep that in mind. Keep that in mind. Now, Supreme Court is going to get involved over the tariffs. It's coming because a federal appeals court ruled Friday that all of these reciprocal levies under this emergency that Trump has called, they're illegal. They're illegal. So this is going to hit the Supreme Court, but the court did say, the appellate court said that he can keep the tariffs in place till October 14th. That will give the administration time to appeal it. Okay? Get their ducks in a row. That has been a tactic used by other judges that are striking down Trump administration policy. They're being wise about it. They're putting delayed dates on the effectiveness of their decision, like this one, not the first time. And they're allowing, an adequate defense. So nobody can sit here and say, hey, they got railroaded. They're weaponized. They're radical judges. No, this is not radical. This is, we find it illegal, and we're giving you time to tell us why it's not. But at the same time, congressional Democrats, they are trying to put an end to the actual emergency that Trump is leaning on for these tariffs. They're trying to say whatever emergency there may have been, it's now over. Now you're just on to hurting the American people's pocketbooks, wallets, bank accounts. There's no more emergency. And so the congressional Democrats, they are moving forward. Supreme Court's going to hear this. They're thinking maybe by fall, autumn-ish, it'll get to the Supreme Court. And whatever they rule on this, just like the Lisa Cook firing, again, the Supreme Court is in a position to lay out the groundwork, the mapping for how this will go going forward. If the Supreme Court allows Lisa Cook to be fired for cause over a mortgage deal when she wasn't in office, that will open the door for many more frivolous and unknowable firings out of Trump going forward. And if the Supreme Court decides that these reciprocal tariffs are in fact legal, it will pave the way for Trump to do more and more and more going forward. Really ramp up the tariff war. Full, just sixth gear. I mean, it's been slowly building, and we laid out to you the different countries and what they're facing and how politicized some of these numbers are, like Brazil, who have indicted Bolsonaro. That's Trump's buddy, so they're facing 50%. India, who is supplying Russia with a lot of their war effort, 50% tariffs on them as well. And by the way, India is completely steadfast. Like many other nations have come and bent the knee, they are not. They are not. Many of the nations have come and they've made a deal and they're facing less. Japan, EU, the list goes on of countries that came and bent the knee to Don. And they got way lower tariff rates, 10, 15%. Japan especially came and made a deal. So we're going to talk about the Supreme Court battle over the tariffs going forward. That October 14th date, just add that along to that September 30th date, right? That's the shutdown, September 30th. October 14th, that's when the tariffs end unless Trump can successfully appeal that. Yeah. We do have some videos today. So let's get into it a little bit. I do have Chris Hayes. We've shown you some really good videos of Chris Hayes over the last couple weeks. He had some things to say about this tariff decision.
Good evening from New York. I'm Chris Hayes. We've got some breaking news just now on the central economic policy of this Trump administration. In a huge blow to the White House and its agenda, and a big win, I would say, for everyone else, a federal appeals court has just ruled that Trump's sprawling tariffs are unlawful and invalid. Of course, the president has been obsessed with imposing his willy-nilly tariffs on Americans. In fact, it has been the central plank of his entire economic agenda. Now, it has been wildly unpopular. It's polling underwater. It is costing consumers and corporations billions and billions of dollars by the day. It's stopping the Fed from cutting interest rates by driving inflation. It has, on the whole, been really bad economic policy. And most of the discussion of these tariffs have been focused on that. But there's also something about these tariffs, which is that from the jump, they've been pretty clearly illegal. I mean, think about it for a second. Can the president just by himself create tariffs that raise hundreds of billions of dollars with zero congressional input? These tariffs are a violation of the law that they purport to use as the justification, and a violation of the spirit of the Constitution of a country which was quite literally founded on the belief the executive cannot unilaterally just impose a tax without representation, specifically tariffs.
Like what we're built on. Why thousands of people died. No taxation without representation. You can't unilaterally just tax us, Don. It's not bigly. It's not strongly. It's pissing us off. And now, an appeal court says it's also illegal. Hayes continues.
Now, the Trump administration has claimed that its tariff regime and the reciprocal tariffs that it has, and those on China and Mexico and Canada, that those are an emergency measure under a 1974 law, and that made it illegal. Well, when this was challenged in a district court, the district court judge said, no way, this does not comport with the law. So the Department of Justice, acting as Trump's lawyers, appealed. And now, just 20 minutes ago, in a huge development, an appellate court has just upheld that ruling 7-4, the federal appellate circuit, saying it is illegal. All the tariffs you're citing are illegal. The emergency you claim is not a valid basis to break the law.
Boom. And I said, the emergency itself that he's referring to, congressional Democrats are trying to get that over, trying to make that end. It's officially over, Don. No more emergency. So, just so you're clear, on September 4th, we're going to hear from RFK Jr. in front of the Senate. That should be awesome. That should be fun television. September 5th, we've got our first jobs report since our new BLS commissioner has been appointed. You think those might be favorable to the administration? So, it's going to be the bigly, greatest, the best numbers some people say they've ever seen. So, officially begins the era of we can't believe anything coming out of the White House at all. Any numbers, you can't believe anything. September 10th, that's the end of the 2-week clock he's given Putin and Zelensky. September 10th as well is when the D.C. takeover is supposed to end. Remember, that's a temporary emergency. September 30th, that's the shutdown. And October 14th, that's when the tariffs are over for now.
We'll be back to break it all down. You're listening to Brett Breaks Things. Brett Breaks Things. Fighting for America, one mic drop at a time.
A dramatic move by President Trump tonight. He's trying to single-handedly block nearly $5 billion in foreign aid already approved by Congress. And he's doing it by invoking a little-known power play called a pocket rescission, effectively cutting lawmakers out of the process.
That is when a president asks Congress to cancel funds so close to the end of the fiscal year that Congress can't act on the request and the funds expire. In this instance, $3.2 billion would be cut from development assistance, along with $838 million from peacekeeping efforts, $520 million in contributions to the UN, and $322 million from the State Department's Democracy Fund. The Republican chair of the Senate Appropriations Committee, Susan Collins, publicly criticized the request, writing in a statement that, quote, any effort to rescind appropriated funds without congressional approval is a clear violation of the law.
So with everything else going on, all the things I just mentioned to you, now this. And this is exactly what Russ Vought promised us. This is what we were promised. Put us in shock, weaponize the budget. And he was appointed to the perfect place to do this, the Office of Management and Budget, OMB. He's the head of the OMB, and this is his new little scheme he's cooked up to paralyze us, to weaponize the budget. Here he goes. A pocket rescission. $4.9 billion canceled from USAID. Last night, President Trump canceled $4.9 billion in American last foreign aid using a pocket rescission. The White House OMB posted on X, adding Trump will always put America first. The president is using his authority under the Impoundment Control Act to deploy a pocket rescission, canceling $4.9 billion in woke and weaponized foreign aid money that violates the America First priorities. The president's America First priorities. So, presidents in the past have tried to seize money, stop money from going to places they didn't want it to go to, right? Congress would approve funding for something the president didn't like, and they would impound it. Nixon did it quite a bit. So in 1974, they passed a law called the Congressional Budget and Impoundment Control Act, okay, to rein in Nixon and him unilaterally just taking money away from congressionally approved budgets, okay? In that law, there is a little detail where if the president doesn't like funding, they can do a special message, okay, to Congress to withhold or change, stop the funding. They can request nicely, I don't like this, please make it stop. 243 of those special messages have been sent along to Congress since the law was enacted, okay? But this particular special message is devious because in this act, the president can freeze the funds for 45 days while Congress approves or denies or changes or does whatever they want to do with that funding, per the special message. 45 days, it's frozen by the president. Well, if the president decides to freeze funding when the fiscal year is less than 45 days away from ending, then that's it. They can't approve it, deny it, extend it. It's done. The 45-day freeze will be longer than they have on the fiscal year. It can't be addressed. It's called a pocket rescission. It's called a pocket rescission.
What the hell is a pocket rescission? Senator Jeff Merkley here. I thought I'd try to give an explanation. The Trump administration wants to repeal funds that were allocated in a bipartisan way, and they want to do it in a fashion that is, quite frankly, unconstitutional. Why do I say unconstitutional? Because the Constitution gives the power of the purse to Congress, and then the president is supposed to execute that. The head of OMB, his name is Russell Vogt, says, no, I don't like that. I want to have a strongman presidency where the president decides what's spent. He says, well, here's what I'll do. I will pretend through most of the budget year that I'm going to spend the funds, and then at the very end of the budget year, I will submit a request to repeal funding. It's called a rescission. And under existing law, I have some 45 days in which I can pause the funding to get an answer from Congress. But oops, it was at the end of the budget year, calendar ran out, so now he's effectively canceled funding without going through a formal process, and that's what a pocket rescission is. It's not the normal way of doing things. It's not acceptable.
So now Russ and I have explained it to you. I should have skipped that one. I did explain it, but there's Merkley kind of telling you in his own way what it is. And Russ was asked about this by Tapper in July. He sat down with a conversation with Jake Tapper, and Tapper addressed this. He danced around this. Here's what Russ had to say then.
There are reports that you're considering using something called a pocket rescission, which is essentially allow the White House to run out the clock to sidestep Congress weighing in on additional spending cuts. Democrats say that's illegal. You can't do it. Is this a tool you're going to use?
It's very possible that we might use pocket rescissions. It's one of our executive tools. It's been used before. The General Accounting Office, which we're not a big fans of, has said it was legal in the 1970s. And now, so Congress has come along and said, hey, we have concerns with it. It is a fully legal approach to being able to use the Impoundment Control Act, another law we're not too big fans of, to use that to be able to send up a rescissions bill later in the year and be able to have it just evaporate at the end of the fiscal year.
So you said possible, but it sounded like you were about to say likely.
No, we're definitely looking at it. We're looking at all options. I've said on every one of these shows, nothing is taken off the table for us to be able to deal with the deficits that we have.
By the way, legal opinion is it's not legal. Most people asked about it. Legal experts are saying, no, it's not legal, actually. You're trying to bypass Congress to take funding away unilaterally. It's not legal. It's not legal. That's why he's saying it's legal so many times, because he knows it's not. He knows it's not. Chuck Schumer said in a statement, Democrats stand ready to work with anyone to help American families lower health care costs and secure our communities. But if Republicans are insistent on going it alone, Democrats won't be party to their destruction. No, and Patty Murphy, Democratic senator out of Washington, said no lawmaker should accept this absurd, illegal ploy to steal their constitutional power to determine how taxpayer dollars get spent. Susan Collins, it's so funny. Susan Collins, she loves to be the first Republican to the table to say, oh, bad Trump. But then when it comes time to vote and actually stop him, she's nowhere to be seen. But she talked about this. Any effort to rescind appropriated funds without congressional approval is a clear violation of the law. Instead of this attempt to undermine the law, the appropriate way is to identify ways to reduce excessive spending through the bipartisan annual appropriations process. You talk a good game, Susan. You talk a great game, Susan. You really do.
Over the weekend, Brett, there was a big rally up there in Maine. Bernie Sanders endorsed her opponent, Graham Planter, and the crowd was crazy, and he had some really cool things to say. Hopefully we get to bring you some of that this week. But
let's go.
She's got a little bit of a contender there with
Good.
the Sanders coalition behind. So
love it.
We'll see how it goes.
Let's get her out of there. Because every time we look to her to do the right thing, on the heels of something she says leading up to a vote, she always talks a good game, and it's always to jockey for her position. It's never for ours. It sounds good until it's time to vote with Miss Collins. She folds every single time, Scott. She folds every time. So USAID is on the chopping block. And I want to tell you a little bit about USAID. We did this a little bit about 2 months ago, but I want everybody to know what woke and weaponized, in Trump's view, looks like. Now, USAID was formed in 1961 under President John F. Kennedy. He signed the Foreign Assistance Act that created USAID. Humanitarian response to overseas disasters, floods, lack of water, lack of shelter, emergency health care, okay, global health. We'll get to that, the AIDS treatment, malaria, TB, all sorts of things they've contributed to the health of that, to treatment of that and prevention of that. Economic growth, agriculture and food security, education, water sanitation, climate and environment awareness, energy infrastructure programs, and democracy, governance, and civil society support, elections, rule of law, anti-corruption. We'll get to all that in just a second. But USAID's humanitarian arm alone has responded to 84 crises across 64 countries. That seems pretty woke to me, like they are aware. They are awake to what is happening in the world, the crisis, the demand for something like this. They're aware. They are woke. It sounds like they're completely awake, or were. Global AIDS response through PEPFAR, HIV prevention, testing, treatment in over 50 countries, saving anywhere between 25 and 26 million lives. As I read this, I argue that this might have been the greatest work America was doing, the greatest expenditure of money. I argue this is the best thing we had going. Smallpox eradication. In the 60s and 70s, smallpox was an epidemic. It's a pandemic. And we eradicated it by 1980 through funding, staff, logistical support, the WHO campaign. We eradicated smallpox in 1980. The first human disease eliminated globally, ever. USAID did that. USAID did that. Green Revolution in agriculture, with high yield wheat and rice, they eliminated famine and secured food for millions of people across dozens of countries. Eliminated famine through high yield wheat and high yield rice, helping them plant it and cultivate it and feed their people. In 1994, after apartheid ended, USAID went in there and they completely reformed their electoral process. They provided voter education, ballot materials, logistics. Millions of South Africans voted for the first time in their lives because of USAID. And now, using this dirty, illegal trick, Trump has eliminated all of that. It's a skeleton crew. It's a skeleton crew. And guess who has now been placed at the head of USAID? That's right. Mr. Project 2025 himself, Russ Vought, will be leading USAID, or what's left of it, until it expires. We gave him that power. Oh, I'm sorry, Rubio. I'm sorry. Who gave him that power? Rubio gave him that power. Mr. Secretary of Everything, Marco Rubio, gave him that power. And what did Rubio say about USAID in the past?
We don't have to give foreign aid. We do so because it furthers our national interest. That's why we give foreign aid. Now, obviously, there's a component to foreign aid that's humanitarian in scope, and that's important too. I promise you it's going to be a lot harder to recruit someone to anti-Americanism, anti-American terrorism, if the United States of America was the reason why they're even alive today. Anybody who tells you that we can slash foreign aid and that will bring us to balance is lying to you. Foreign aid is less than 1% of our budget. It's just not true.
Now, those comments paint a pretty clear picture, right? He said foreign aid was critical to U.S. foreign policy. Now he's trying to dismantle the agency behind it, but that's really not all that we found. We also found that in 2022, he sent a letter to Joe Biden in which he actually suggested they increase the USAID budget. He said that it was necessary to counter Chinese Communist Party influence. China has basically their own version of USAID. And I want to read a little bit of what he wrote in that letter to Biden that we uncovered. He said, quote, "We urge you to use your fiscal year 2023 budget request for the Defense Department, Department of State, and U.S. Agency for International Development to send a clear message that the United States has a comprehensive strategy to counter the Chinese Communist Party's expanding global influence and the increasing threat that it poses to U.S. Security interests and those of our allies and partners."
It is estimated by the year 2030, these cuts will contribute directly to the deaths of 14 million people, 5 million of whom will be children. That's according to a recent study in The Lancet, by the way. So USAID is closing shop. The Trump administration is selling and redistributing some of the goods. In Guatemala, they're selling iPads, ring lights, megaphones, defibrillators. In Nigeria, they're selling off computer supplies, generators, things like that. I mean, it's a wholesale. It's a wholesale. Everything's got to go. USAID going out of business sale. Everything must go, go, go. Yeah, like the Halloween. So yeah, like this. The whatever Halloween. But by the way, and in Afghanistan specifically, the people who work for USAID are saying, we're just going to give it to them. We're just going to give it to these governments. Hopefully they'll put it to good use.
Breaking politics, breaking narratives, breaking news. But first, we need a coffee break. Breaking news, breaking rules, breaking through. Back to Brett Breaks Things.
Okay. So we talked about what Russ Vaught's up to, right? He promised us. We could only speculate at the time what this could look like. Now you are seeing it. We are infected. We are infected. And I'm showing you some of the white blood cells. I'm showing them to you. You know, the appellate court saying the tariffs aren't legal. Not legal. Judges pushing back from appointments. Democratic senators doing what they can to delay and obstruct more damaging appointments. We showed you Pritzker and some mayors, Mayor Bass, over in Boston, and Pritzker in Chicago. Their response to more authoritarian policy, the DOJ letter saying you sanctuary cities better get in line with our deportation policy or else. You saw what happened to D.C., right? That could happen to you. Little authoritarian, little letter sent out to these people. They pushed back. That's what the white blood cells look like. And I'm going to show you some more pushback. I'm going to show you some more fighting of this disease. Fighting. Taking a stand. Making the right decisions. What does it look like? I'm going to show you some more.
Breaking tonight, yet another major legal setback against Donald Trump's extreme immigration policies, all of it playing out in the dark of night with nothing less than the lives of hundreds of children at stake. A federal judge temporarily blocked the administration from deporting more than 600 Guatemalan children back to their home country, several of whom have even expressed fear about returning. Now, the suit was filed in the middle of the night by immigrant advocacy groups. The New York Times reports, quote, in its 25-page complaint, the National Immigration Law Center said that the children had active cases before immigration courts across the country and that their repatriation would violate the law and the Constitution. It also called the government's actions unlawful and reckless. Throughout Trump's time in politics, he has repeatedly claimed that his immigration crackdown is about going after the worst of the worst. But let me just read you the background of one of the plaintiffs in this case, a 10-year-old indigenous girl identified only by the initials LGML. She speaks a rare language. She's detained at a children's shelter in Texas. Her mother is deceased, and she suffered abuse and neglect from other caregivers. And our government was about to put her on a plane and ship her off to a completely different country. This is who the Trump administration wants you to believe are the worst of the worst.
Guatemalan children. The war on Guatemalan children, the worst of the worst. The worst of the worst. Judge Sparkle L. Suknanen of the U.S. District Court from District Columbia of D.C. issued a temporary restraining order forbidding the administration from deporting these children. Now, the administration is saying, how dare you, radicalized judges, how dare you, Democrats, stop these children from being reunited with their parents. Now, that's what they're saying on their side, and we'll hear from them. The reality, the groups that are suing to keep these children safe, they're saying these children are terrified of going back to Guatemala. Their lives will be in danger. We are the only thing keeping them safe. Around 2,000 Guatemalan children are currently in custody in dozens of shelters, and none of them want to go back to Guatemala. There is a reason for that, but the Republicans are saying, you terrible, radicalized leftists, you're stopping this heartwarming reunion. No. And like that report said, these kids were on the plane in Texas, on the tarmac, ready to take off before Suknanen stopped them in their tracks. The worst of the worst, right? The worst of the worst, right?
You know, there's a distinction between someone wanting to repatriate, that is, go back to their home country, and there's an agreement, and we know that the Homeland Security Secretary certainly met with Guatemalan officials about that. But there's a distinction between that and just rounding up people and getting them out on a plane. Do they want to go? Are they afforded certain protections? Have they spoken with their lawyer? Were they given notice and the right to be heard? And so absolutely, there's a huge gap between just saying, hey, we're just sending them back to reunite with their parents, than that factually being so. And you know, certainly people who are suing on behalf of the children have every right to question and be skeptical about the claim that we're just taking them back so they could reunite with their parents where they belong. They believe that as officials who sued on behalf of these children, that is not true, particularly in all circumstances.
Right, and attorneys for some of the children say that they didn't get their due process rights to go before a judge and really talk about what it would mean for them to be sent back to Guatemala.
They're scared. They don't want to go back. Trump administration is so fired up about sending them back. They had to stop them on the tarmac. That's the depths that they are sinking to keep this racist, unconstitutional deportation policy alive. The one thing they've got going that they promised during the campaign that is actually working in the eyes of some of their base. It may be ugly. People's rights might be trampled, but we're getting those brown people out of here because that's our real problem, even though they contribute billions in taxes and contribute billions in industries across this country. They're the problem. So whatever we got to do to keep this policy alive, we're going to do, including sending back 600 scared Guatemalan children to be oppressed. Ooh, I'm so fired up about it. I'm knocking my mic over. Okay, the pushback. Oh, you want to hear what the right has to say about this before we move on?
Today you saw something extraordinary in Washington, D.C., and by extraordinary, I mean disgusting. In the middle of the night, at 3:30 a.m., a local judge in D.C. enjoined the Department of Justice, ICE, and DHS from sending Guatemalan children back to their parents in Guatemala. Now think about that. Think about that for a minute. In the middle of the night, without even asking the government for their position, this judge enjoined the conduct of ICE and DHS. What she said is that notwithstanding the work that the State Department have done and working with the Guatemalan government for over a month to identify children who were smuggled into this country away from their parents, who are now sitting in foster homes and orphanages around this country, to send them back to their parents in Guatemala, this judge said, nope, you cannot do it, in the middle of the night.
Well, you have a really good Solicitor General and a really...
I have no interest in listening to Trey Gowdy. None. He can shut up. Todd Blanche. Deputy AG Todd Blanche. So, you go down and you meet with Ghislaine, and you ensure that those parties that abused and victimized young children, you ensure that their names won't come out. And you ensure, through Ghislaine, that your dear leader won't be implicated in any way. You cover it up. You get on the same page. Whatever Ghislaine's got to say to get to that nice, cushy minimum security prison camp, and whatever you got to do, AG, to cover your butt, Deputy AG, and cover your boss's butt. You'll go down and do that. And then on the back end, you want to send these children back to Guatemala to be oppressed, and who knows what else. I'm not going to sit here and speculate on what could possibly happen to children being sent to Guatemala. So on the front end, you ensure those who have victimized children remain anonymous. And on the back end, you want to send 600 Guatemalan children back to Guatemala from the safety that they enjoyed it here. Okay, just so we're getting that clear, Todd. Just so we're all on the same page. What does the pushback look like? Let me show you what the pushback looks like. So let me tell you what the pushback sounds like. Expedited removal. Expedited removal is a process that is being employed by this administration to hasten the amount of undocumented immigrants being deported. Now, it was created in 1996 to curb illegal immigration. Anybody caught within 100 miles of our border or have been here less than 14 days, they are subjected to expedited removal. They see an immigration judge immediately. They give their asylum claim. If it is rejected by that judge, they are sent back, just like that. Well, this administration has been using this inside our borders, well outside the purview of expedited removal. U.S. District Judge Gia M. Cobb of D.C. said in a 48-page opinion that expedited removal is being used illegally right now by this administration. In her ruling in a case brought by civil rights groups, wrote that in defending this skimpy process, the government makes a truly startling argument that those who entered the country illegally are entitled to no process under the Fifth Amendment, but instead must accept whatever grace Congress affords them. Were that right, not only non-citizens, but everyone would be at risk. Now, she was appointed by Joe Biden. Okay, she is a Biden appointee. But she's made it clear, you cannot use expedited removal on anybody you've picked up outside of that 100-mile range of the border. And that's what they've been doing. And so, Gia Cobb has put an end to it for now. for now. Will that get kicked up to the Supreme Court? Most likely. Most likely, a lot of this will. Supreme Court's going to be big. Big coming up. Lisa Cook on the Fed board. Trump called for her firing. Charges? No charges. What they are alleging is that she committed mortgage fraud. The Supreme Court's going to have to decide whether Trump can do that by himself and whether it's legal in and of itself for cause. Is this excuse for cause? She wasn't even in the Fed board at the time. The Fed has been traditionally protected by the Supreme Court. What will this Supreme Court do? What will they do? The tariffs. The Supreme Court will be hearing this, and they will decide, can Trump unilaterally fly past Congress and implement these tariffs? Is this emergency enough? And is it even still valid? All of it is going to land in the seat of the Supreme Court. It's going to be big.
They'll try to repair the narrative, but Brett Breaks Things will be back tomorrow to break it all down.